Welcome back to another episode of Out There with Johnny. It's been a while. The weather's been really bad. So, cloudy nights, premium nights with clearness has been far, far, far and very few between. But I have a couple things here and there to share with you. But tonight's video, what I want to talk about is questions on this SkyHunter from Ioptron. This is definitely a mount that either you love it, you hate it, or you just simply tolerate it. I've spent a lot of time with this thing over the last few months, and starting out with one that didn't work. It had the original problems everyone had, and I've replaced the board in it. I've upgraded the firmware, and then I've had to simply learn all the idiosyncrasies that this thing has, that it just makes it so different from other mounts. And one of the questions that I've seen a couple of times now is on the RA axis, how do you know it's tight? How do you keep it from rocking? What problems are there? So I kind of want to go over that tonight. I've got it set up with my typical setup that I usually do. I did have to end up buying an extender bar here because I just need that extra ½ inch to get the weight down enough to balance this out. I couldn't get it high enough on the lower connection because of the mount, the extension head itself, and I couldn't get it down far enough mounted to the RA axis to completely balance this. And of course, I also have a William Optics GT71 that I also put on this that does really well. Before I got the extension bar, I had to put 2 weights on it and put it down here. I'm going to try with the extension bar if I can get away with 1 weight, but that's a whole other experiment another time. But the William Optics 71, GT71, worked really well on this. Now, I have exclusively been using it in equatorial mode. The other night, I went out to try it from my backyard, and I discovered my trees have grown so tall that I can't get a good northern sky picture to do polar alignment anymore. So I said, what the heck, I'll try it in Alt-az. So I disassembled it, put it directly on the tripod, went to Alt-az mode, hooked up the ASI Air Plus to it. You can pick SkyHunter on the new 2.0 firmware. That's beta. It's beta right now still, but you can download it from their site. The 2.0 actually has SkyHunter selection in it. And I thought I was going to have to find another sub-selection that said SkyHunter AZ. But apparently it knows when it's AZ. There was nothing else. I had to pick SkyHunter. That was it. Whether it's an EQ or AZ, the software that works with it knows which mode it's in, which is really nice. And the go-tos for plate solving in AZ were perfect, and I was able to capture 30 seconds of exposures for what I was looking for that night. But what I want to go through tonight is these clutch issues, the RA, the declination, what I do to know that it's tight. And plus I found another issue that I'm going to take a close look at. I may make another change that goes against what they tell you in the instruction book. So some people have just flat out disliked these because of this RA clutch. It's terrible, and I don't argue with them. It's terrible. It's not your typical clutch you can mess with. Now, some people on cloudy nights have made some alterations. It makes it easier for them. I know one guy who drilled and tapped so he could put the same knobs. There's knobs on Ioptron's AZ Mount Pro that screws in, and it looks kind of like a ship's steering wheel with the knobs on it. He drilled and tapped this to put the knob on it as well to give him some leverage on it. But here's what works for me. When I need to loosen this thing, basically it's real tight, as you see right now. You can't get a grip on this to let it go. So what I have to end up doing is forcing it. You think it's going to break, but trust me, it doesn't. I do this all the time. At least on this one, nothing actually breaks. But then when it does, it allows me to loosen this up. But what I do is I have to hold it and turn the mount to slowly loosen it. then I can do anything I want to with it. Now, one of the questions that came from one of my subscribers was from Dawn. Dawn has a wobble in it, which is what you see here. And it's going to do that the whole time until you get it tight. Now here's the thing. I can tighten this up, but I have to wobble it the whole time. Let's see if I can do this better here. I have to wobble it the whole time to get this thing down. Still, even when I can't turn it anymore, it's wobbling. So what I have to do is turn it a little bit this way, wobble it till I get it to turn, and then force it to sink by turning the whole thing like that. Now it's tight. Now what I do now is I drive it through the motors, I drive it to my 0 position, and then I turn it off and turn it back on. Again, something that a lot of people just don't want to deal with. I'm okay with it. It's different. I'm okay with it. Once I do that, then most of that wobble's gone. Now there's still some wobble, and I noticed I couldn't figure out, where was this wobble coming from, because the whole mount's wobbling. It's not just the axis, but when you look closely, I don't know if you can see it here. Hang on to the mount here. There's a wobble right here. And so I've got to, it's kind of the same thing here. I've got to kind of force it, and most of it goes away. But there's still wobble in the mount itself. And what I noticed is when I look really closely where it attaches right here to the mount, on the instructions, it tells you that when you put this on, and we'll take this off for a second. When you put this on, there is a little screw right here, depending on your latitude, which hole does it go in. Well, this one is almost to the top, which means my mounting bracket on the head can only come down to the top of that screw. That means I'm only engaging the top part of this with the head. And it's wobbling. It's not fully engaged. It's actually wobbling. It's actually wobbling on this right here. So I'm not sure why they require you to put a screw to set up higher or lower, depending on your latitude. It's just something I'm probably not getting. So if I take this out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it all the way down in the lowest setting. Actually next to the lowest setting. And let's see if that'll let me get more of my bracket in there. So now, if I take this and slide it on, I'm definitely fully engaged on that. Now wobble's gone. Other than just a little bit of wobble, well, let me hold this because I'm sitting on carpet, so the whole tripod's rocky. But if I hold this still, got a little bit. But it's not nearly as bad. There's still some, and I think it's still in this RA. Whoa, don't want that going anywhere. That should be a blooper. All right, so there's still a little bit of wobble on its axis, and I'm not sure if it's definitely on the RA. So a lot of the wobble's out. I have still captured 2-minute images with this with 0 issues. I don't guide. I don't like to guide. I have guiding equipment, but I typically don't do much more than 2 minutes of exposures. And I can now with a really good PA, I can get as much as 3 to almost 5 minutes, tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. But in general, 2 minutes is about as much as I expose on most typical targets. I do a lot of EAA, but I do EAA and astrophotography, kind of a hybrid. So what happens is when I do EAA, I manually I don't manually, I tell the program to solve every capture it does. So I'm watching an EAA and playing with a histogram on a screen, but it's saving every image it takes separately. When I go, so later I can download all those and then go to my Affinity Photo and do all the astrophotography stacking and tweaking and this, that, one thing and another through that program. So I kind of do both. There is a tiny bit, so Don, there is a tiny bit of wobble left. It's not a whole lot. It's probably no more than I've seen some of the more expensive mounts. I have seen I've seen what's the company out of California? Orion. I've had them. You can feel the backlash a little bit in the gearing. Same thing with a couple other brands, Celestron and so forth and so on. But like I said, I've never had an issue with this doing anything weird in my imaging after the board was replaced and the firmware was updated. So I hope this kind of helps a little bit. Again, this isn't going to break it. It feels like it is, but it's not. And it sounds like it does because it cracks. But that's just it letting go. It is not a good design. There's no argument there. And like I said, you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's just that kind of a thing. And in my case, I think I've just learned to tolerate it. So I hope this helps. I'm going to follow up with some other images and videos. I did get the GT71 on this. I got it out under my dark skies in West Texas. It did extremely well with that telescope on it, which is quite a bit larger than what you see here. I do want to try my Mac 127. I think the focal length may just be way too long for it, but we'll see what happens. I'll put a reducer on it, my 6.3, see if that helps it out. It would be nice weight-wise, the Mac would fit on this perfectly. Focal length-wise, I don't know if this little mount can do it or not. But that's one of the things I want to test out and see how it does. So with that, I hope this helps answer some questions. I hope this kind of shows that, yes, it is a unique mount. It takes a lot of tolerance to work with it. And Don, I hope I answered your question. Maybe some of this will help you. There's going to be a little bit of play in there. I'm not sure what it's for, or what it's from, but it has not impacted my imaging. So it may be a no issue, but it is imperative that you actually make sure that this is fully engaged, because if it's not, you will get a bad rock, just like that. And then you just have to keep rocking it and turning it and then leave it to the side like this. So the last thing you do is you turn it to engage it really tight. Then you drive it to zero position by the motors, turn it off, turn it back on, and go on from there. So, with that said, I will see you out there next time, and clear skies, hopefully, for somebody, because it hasn't been happening here. See you later.